Today we're continuing our conversation on how to grow your business, and we've brought on Charles Roto Wren to talk about what it takes to move from a solo operation to adding your first team member. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and please click the notification bell to be notified of every new episode.
Charles, thank you for taking part of this episode with us. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
We saw that recently you hired an editor for your company, and that definitely raised a lot of very interesting questions on our side, considering that we all come from a background of being employees to then being business owners, and now you took the step on hiring someone. So we would like to know a little bit about this journey. Maybe you could start with what made you decide to have your own business, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So I guess like I sort of like, honestly, I sort of like fell into this maybe about 10 years ago. I did the whole media studies thing at college, which if I'm honest, at the time, it was just a reason for me not to get a job at the time. And then went through a bunch of jobs, started realizing I needed to do something creative to get me through the day. I've always been creative, like playing music, artsy, drawing, little animations and stuff. And then I ended up like picking up a camera after I did a job with a local watch company, like wristwatches. Was designing wristwatches for a while, which is a weird niche to get into, man. Also, not a graphic designer, so that was an odd thing to do for a few years. But eventually, picked up the camera I just bought myself a little HD at the time, like a Sony Handycam thing. It was dreadful, but at the time, it's like it just reignited that spark that I'd had, so many years previous at college. And yeah, I started monkeying around with editing. This is probably going back 10, 11, 12 years, something like that. And the more I got into that, the more I started to remember and realize how much I loved that and just the process of telling stories. So I became deeply, deeply obsessed with that. Ended up sort of just contacting a local company and saying, listen, I've got no experience. I would love to come and just give us a job, basically, just give me a chance. So they did. They called me in. I ended up moving jobs, and I was with them for about 7 years. Went from sort of junior editor and then became effectively a senior editor, but it was such a small team that there was the hierarchy was sort of, it wasn't strictly you were a junior or a senior. I certainly started as a junior, but after that, you just did whatever was given to you. Started building a VFX department, initially of just me, and then we started doing more stuff with 3D, brought on a dedicated 3D artist, started doing a lot of VFX heavy work. And then, I guess that was all amazing, but it sort of got to the stage where I was just thinking I just wanted to do something more. Also, I'm a horrible employee because my way of working, I hyper focus, and then after that I'm completely drained to the point where I'm just useless. So in a conventional 9 to 5, and I think you find this quite a lot with creative types who start their own businesses. I wanted to sort of work by my rules, and I wanted to work a little bit more flexibly and progressively, and it just made more sense. And at that point, I had started freelancing a lot more, and I started to think about potentially starting up my own business. And that, over the course of a year, that spiraled into me suddenly realizing this is definitely the right thing to do. I got a couple of clients on the go, one really big client that I'd still work with. I'm very privileged to still work with those guys. I do work all over the world for those guys. And it's been going great since then. And it was really sort of towards the end of last year, probably middle of last year, that I think up until that point, I'd had this romance of me, or it just being me forever. I'll always just this one-man business, which is perfect for so many businesses and so many people. but for how I work, there's so many tasks that I do not excel at.
Okay, so I want to interrupt you there real quick, because
Go for it.
definitely for you to get to the next step in your story, you had to have at least a certain client base, right?
Yeah.
And how would you say that you acquired that client base for everyone that's out there? I mean, we actually do have a lot of people that are business owners listening
Sure.
to the show, and they keep on coming with the same questions about how to communicate with clients and etc. But I think step number one is how to get the client. So
Yeah, of course,
how
of
do
course.
you get your clients?
It's a big leap to go from doing your own
Massive.
thing to even your first employee. So
Yeah,
you need a certain stability, which can be tricky in this business because clients come and go. So
Yeah.
like, how do you, income might be great one year, and then it might be down the next year, then up again higher the next year. But emotionally, how do you handle like, oh my God, I'm then going to be responsible for somebody else's livelihood?
Yeah,
You know?
I mean that's definitely a tricky one. And in terms of getting the right clients, I mean, I wish I had a formula for that. I was quite fortunate in, like, I think it was like a time and place thing. It's not a formula that I'd be able to advise on. For me, it was quite fortunate that I happened to connect through somebody who knew this quite big American company. And they wanted a lot of content creating on a regular basis. They initially wanted to employ someone. I wanted to build a business, and we started talking and seeing how it could work. And it's sort of like, so we both agreed really, it was mutually beneficial for me I did quite a lot of work with them while I was at my previous job. And yeah, they wanted to move away from like the standard corporate headshots and things. Not that that's a bad thing, it was just their personal decision. And my work seems to be like a perfect fit for what they wanted to do. And yeah, I ended up sort of like getting enough work from them under my belt, and it was consistent enough on a monthly basis that I figured at the very least I could make the jump. So initially, from leaving work, that was enough for me to make the jump. The next jump just came from me realizing, to be honest with you, it was kind of a risk, like a calculated risk. It felt like. So I started adding up, how much I would need, how much extra I'd need to bring in order to cover another salary. But the more I thought about it, the more obvious it seemed, in that what I've actually the productivity of the business as a whole, since having, like, my guy is in right behind us at the minute. It's called Alex, like, amazing guy, super enthusiastic, and just like just sitting over there with his headphones on, just trying to, not sure whether to acknowledge the conversation or not, but amazing guy, like, genuinely, like, completely changed. This sounds dramatic, like, changed the business already in the last few months. But like, sort of, for me, it's like a life-changing move on so many levels. So I juggle quite, typical things like, work and family, and all the other little things that fit in between those. But like, over the last year, I found it very, very hard just to keep the balance, even with like the work and family balance. I've found that very hard to keep on top of, especially when trying to develop products and extra brands. I think if I had been focused on just having this one client, it probably wouldn't be a big deal. I would actually still be able to get on and just take care of them on my own. But because I'm naturally quite ambitious, what I want to do with the business is more, and I don't want that to affect that one client. That's part of the point. But I don't want it to be exclusively that one client. So
Yes.
It's that balance of saying, like, look, let's look after these guys because they're tremendously important, and like, I believe massively in what they're doing as a company. Also, we need to, as a business, take on more than a few jobs here and there. We want to scale.
Well,
Yeah, go on.
the scaling is where I'm really interested, because, I also do 99% of the time everything myself. And it's at that point where I don't know if I can achieve better quality by myself. I'm kind of taxed there. I can't really move beyond that without at least one person to help me. So there's kind of a schism in my brain, because on the one hand, it's like, well, I make enough where I could maybe afford to bring somebody on a part-time basis or on a per-job basis. But that's not guaranteed, because you never know how things are going to go. But then it's like, but if I had somebody come on and we were able to take on a bigger client with a more production value, that project itself might attract more clients. So there's kind of the financial side, and then there's the creative side. And just because I'm an adult, I have to keep in mind the financial side. I've got, a wife and a house and, things like that. But on the creative side, yeah, I'm always wanting to do bigger projects and more ambitious things. So for you, like you said, you were really ambitious, or you're kind of restless, and I'm the same way. So what is that next thing that you wanted to achieve that your employee was designed to help you get to?
I guess the next stage for me was to scale in a meaningful way that was like with consistent work. Like I found it very hard to take care of this. I mean, it was a good problem to have. Like I had so much work on for this one, and still have for this one client, that in order to take care of them properly, it gets to the point where all of the projects sort of start feeling like freelance work. Like if you've ever juggled full-time like employment, being employed, and then running freelance on the side, it started to feel like that, where I was taking home projects in the evening, and it started getting a bit crazy.
So you had more work than you could achieve in the length of day that you wanted to have. Exactly,
and I think that's the other thing that I started to realise, that a big part of many of the reasons why I started this in the first place, I started to lose track of. One of them was to have more freedom of time, which wasn't to say to work less. I knew that I'd most likely work more, but on top of working more, I actually started to feel that I had less freedom of my time. So I'd work, 9 till 5 or 8 till 6, and then go home, do a little bit of family time, and then work into the early hours as well. And it just started getting ridiculous. And then the other crazy thing that I find is definitely I'm a person who needs to step away in order to be creative, and I found myself becoming less and less and less and less and less creative. And the more, especially since having Alex on here, like I cannot emphasize enough what a massive impact that's had on me, on my creativity, like on just my general flow as a person and my overall happiness, because it allows me, if I step back just for a moment, just to figure stuff out and just breathe, then like the fact is that that a business doesn't necessarily completely grind to a halt. Even things like before, it was even going and getting meetings it's always felt a little bit like it's not actual work, it's potential work, but it always feels like, well, there's half a day that maybe I don't get back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, whereas now it's very different. I think one of the things that I noticed immediately though was, as good as it is on so many levels, it felt like a bigger transition than when I left work. Like because leaving work, it felt natural to me. I felt like I wasn't ever going to be a particularly good employee. So it sort of felt like I'm going to go off and do what I was supposed to do all along, but I've now got the experience and skill set to do. Whereas this, because I had this romance of the idea of like me being 70 or like 60 or whatever, and still it just being me in the office, like answering calls, typing up emails, making some changes to a video, going out and shooting something, offloading the footage, doing the edits, doing the color grade, doing a bit of research, looking at cameras, hiring the equipment, making like all the stuff. Like I was like, that would just be me forever. And I think the thing is, well, I know people who do that and have been doing it for years, and that works for them. Totally different mindsets, totally different capabilities. For me personally, it started to affect all other aspects of not just my life, but also the quality of the work that I was putting out, and my enjoyment of that as well. So for me, it was a calculated risk, but it just felt like it felt like something that I've got to try. And so far it's been like right on the money.
We also need to understand one thing here. You're based in the UK, correct?
Yes, yeah.
And the person that you have with you, Alex, is he a full-time employee or is he a contractor?
Yeah, no, he's an employee. He's a part-time employee at the minute. So we've got him on a 3-month part-time placement, and then that will end at the end of February. Then at that point, he will move on to full-time employment. We'll have like a discussion and a review.
So generally speaking, he has his gross salary, and then there's a calculation for health insurance, a calculation for social security.
Yes.
So you're paying all of that. So basically, whatever you're paying him, whatever he's receiving from you, you're paying twice that because of all of those taxes.
I mean, there's various other things that I have to look into, and it'll be different for other countries, of course. But in the UK, I mean, off the top of my head, I spent quite a while sorting things out in terms of like insurance and like lots of the important bits. In terms of pension, he needs to have a pension at the 3-month mark. That's basically so to allow employers to be able to give someone a probation period without having to sort them out, like a pension immediately. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the 3-month period, like at the end of that, he'll need a pension. So there's lots of extra costs, but then there's pros and cons to it. I think part of it, like from my angle, part of the reason that I wanted to do it so badly was that I've not had a bad history with employment. I would say I've been pretty lucky, but there are things that I wanted and expected and would have appreciated in all of my jobs. Some of it comes down to motivation, appreciation, being valued, and I want to be able to provide that to someone. So at the point where I've started thinking about potentially, like expanding and scaling and bringing someone on, a big part of it is like there's a level of security that I provide that person by saying like come and work for this company, but also take full ownership of your role, because it's incredibly important, and it becomes more than contracting someone and suddenly that contract just disappears overnight for them and they're looking for a new job. Especially in Alex's case, he turns up and like he's just the most perfect fit for that person that I need for that role. It makes such a huge difference as well. So that I sort of figure that in return, offering him something that is more permanent and secure, it just naturally seems like a good thing to do. So that's certainly part of it from my angle.
Yeah, having had quite a few jobs over the years, more than I can even count, and I was always a good employee for the most part. But I learned from all of my various bosses in different industries about how I would want to be a boss, the conditions that I would like to create for my future employee. So I completely identify with where you're coming from, where if you bring somebody on, I don't want somebody who just pushes buttons. I want somebody who has their own mind, their own vision, who isn't afraid to give their input, because otherwise they're not really contributing creatively. All that really is it's not even a person. It's just kind of a tool to help you sustain things financially. So that's really interesting to hear. And are you, now that you have an employee, are you seeking, I say, bigger clients or bigger projects?
Yeah, So it's a funny one. Let me just straighten this up. This setup that I've got here is nuts. It's like a complete bodge job. It might as well be taped together.
If only you had an assistant. If
only I had it right. It's multifaceted. So there's something that I'll be able to. I can't go into crazy detail, but there's something that I'm working on, like an idea, sort of product, it needs a significant amount of my time. It's completely related to our line of work, but to get it off the ground, it's going to take a lot of my time and a lot of work. That's one of the things that just having Alex in the office now, suddenly it becomes like a real thing for me to start chasing. So if that's that project and that product it's been something probably over the last 8 to 12 months I've been planning, but really over the last probably 5 or 6 weeks it's just completely accelerated because I've afforded myself a little bit more time and space to be able to think about that.
So no regrets so far in having someone else, even though it's costing you.
Yeah, no. Well, I've already said that. Like, honestly, I would I would actually lose money for a while just for the sanity that I'm gaining from this. And again, it's different for different people. I know some people who would never employ someone because they see it as like a waste of money, and they could do it themselves. They will have different ambitions, different workflows, different. Yeah, it's so unique and bespoke. It's so unique to the individual. I think it's such a personal choice that I would never be able to advise someone on that. For me, it started to become a really crystal clear choice. Also, there's other things that I promised myself I would do. I really passionately want to create a series of, like a whole series of short films. A lot of them revolving around very specific, sort of relatively subtle sometimes integrations of visual effects, like hyper shorts, and create a mini series and start publishing it online, and it be an ongoing project with various people that I know. But it's the kind of thing that, you get like a year and a half into the journey and realize you haven't even, not only have you not done any, but like you've not even begun to think about any. And that was quite an important part for me, because I really wanted to do things for pure pleasure as well as just commercially, and I just haven't got round to so much of that stuff. And also starting to build out. There's a lot of things. I'm starting to develop a second brand at the minute, which is going to be aimed more at high-end clients. So it's going to be aimed at higher-end commercial work, and then I wanted to develop the Charles Wren brand into a more approachable brand, not necessarily tied to local clients, but focusing initially on local clients. In that there's a lot of work out there. There's a lot of local businesses and a lot of independent businesses out there that really crave something creative and like want something beautiful created, but they don't necessarily have the budget. And I'm a firm believer that I think you should have your rates, and personally I think you should stick to your rates where possible, because you only rip yourself off. So it's never been something I've never been able to afford to work with smaller clients, but suddenly I can create slightly different workflows that suddenly become slightly more appealing to smaller businesses, which isn't to say that I create cheap work, but it's to say that I create new workflows and new products and projects that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to focus on just through the process of scaling and expanding. So there's various aspects. It's got me thinking now, honestly, where that ends, if that makes sense. For now, having just one editor in-house is like game changing, and that's all we need to focus on for now. But it's amazing how much things change and how quickly things change.
And do you limit your projects by the people that you have available to you right now, or do you hire them as required per project? For example, in my case, I don't have any employee or anything like that, but at any time if a company says this is what we want, I see, whoa, I will need 5-6 people. I go and then I hire them for that project, and I say, I can source a team that will actually deliver what you need. So do you do that as well, or do you just do what you have in terms of full-time capabilities? Yeah,
I mean both, but I certainly scale on certain projects, on bigger projects, and that's a big part of what I want to do. I want to focus that more on this new brand that I'm creating at the minute, which will be leaning more towards scaling for individual projects. At the minute, I've done that on a few projects, on a handful of projects where I've brought in a couple of different people just because of the budget allowing for that, and the client's brief just requiring that. But yeah, moving forward, that's what this sort of second company that doesn't replace this at all but sits alongside it, that's what that will be aimed at doing. And part of the reason in doing that is that I think it's important to have a level of consistency with what I'm doing. So that's why I want this second second brand and second company, really to be focused so that people know that that's what they expect from that. They expect a team typically to turn up and shoot that. That will be built typically around freelancers.
That's a nice idea.
Around a close net of freelancers that have been building up. So yeah, that's sort of the plan with that side of things, sort of exactly what you were saying there, Philippe.
That's an interesting idea, definitely.
And a lot of this, it seems like, so when one leaves a job as an employee to go solo, you then have the option to choose the projects you want to work on, provided they're out there and you can find them. And then now having your first employee, that pushes that agenda forward, but also allows you actually more time to do that because the wheels are still spinning in the background.
Yeah, exactly that.
But it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing in a sense, because
massively,
it's like, well, I had this bigger client and that allowed me to get the employee, but oftentimes you get the employee to get the bigger client. So it's like, which one has to come first? And like, you know, for anybody out there who might be exactly where I'm at, or Felipe, where they're mostly working solo and wanting to expand their business, like. And I know you said, you know, every case is unique, and that's certainly true. Just like any piece of gears, you know, it's going to be appropriate for one workflow and not another. But I will ask you sort of for advice or for just a more general take on, you know, if you need this to get this, yet you add this to get, you know, how do you sort that out? How do you make that happen?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's part of the reason that I didn't like do this in like May last year. You know, it's part of the reason. Like Alex has been here since he started at the beginning of December. Like technically at the end of November. But yes, that's part of the reason that I went through all this stuff in my head over and over again. And I can't tell you, like I would wake up one day and feel like 100% behind the idea, and wake up the next day and be just like, no, this is mental. What am I even thinking? Like, there's no way I can do this. And it just kept going to and fro, and I started to do, ridiculous as it sounds, I started to just draw up a list of pros and cons, and I did that multiple times. I didn't even use the same list. I just did that sometimes in my head. Sometimes I've got a few scraps of paper that I was doing, and it wasn't ordered, it wasn't technical or official or professional. It was just literally just scribbling pros and cons, like whenever I could, about the process. And every time I thought of like the worst case scenario, and I was advised this by a few people who run businesses, a few friends who run businesses locally who have employees. And the one bit of advice that everyone seemed to give out was like, give it a go. Like in most cases, you've got a 3 to 6 month probation period. You'll learn several things there. One of which is the person right for the role? Another of which is, do you want to do this? Like actually having someone in your business is totally different to just rolling up, you know, as and when you want. There's a certain responsibility, and also, can you afford it? Is it financially viable? And it sort of made a lot of sense. So yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough for someone who I know to point Alex in my direction. He came in for a few weeks trial, and then yeah, it seemed like a risk worth taking, and very, very quickly, like in my scenario, very, very quickly that paid off. But it was definitely a calculated risk. But the more I thought about it, it felt like, to me, it felt like, because I knew I wanted to at the very least try it, and I was serious about that. It felt like, well, you know, like worst case scenario is that it doesn't work out. Someone gets, you know, a few months experience, and I lose a few months pay of whatever I'm paying them. So it just felt like, to me, that felt like a calculated risk. I wasn't committing to, you know, like 40 years employment right off the bat. It felt like, well, let's just see how it goes for a few months. And yeah, that's how I figured it out. And
yeah,
again,
I think that's important. Nothing's permanent, right? I mean, if things don't go well, you just be open and honest, and then say things are not going well, I'm not going to be able to keep you, or something like that. Or start with a project by project basis. Like, let's say, Gabriel, you are officially not one person, because Elizabeth is working with you, and you basically have projects that she is doing. I mean, I think that's a great way of saying, is like, choose which one is the project that you least want to do, and and get that to the other person. Then suddenly that time that you would spend with that project,
Yeah.
you can spend with something else.
I think it's more, at least for me, it's more emotional even than financial. The obstacle to growing. You know, Charles, as you said, I mean, you were mulling over these lists over and over and over again. You didn't say you were there with a calculator every day. It was a list of other pros and cons, and it's in a way it's like letting go of control of everything to allow somebody else in. You know, but as we know from, like, say, any good director that has a very clear vision, but if somebody offers a good idea, you've got to be open to that idea, because you're not going to have all the right answers. You know,
Totally.
If you reach up right now and snap your fingers, and Alex jumps up and grabs you coffee, then I'm totally
do that.
Then I'm totally going to be looking for an employee, because I want that.
That's the thing. I think, like, it's different for everyone. One of the things that definitely held me back for a long time was certainly that I guess, as you've sort of put it, like the emotional attachment, I suppose. The idea that prior to Alex coming in, I could sort of, like, you know, I could just sort of wander in whenever I wanted, really. And just, I could, if I wanted to shift my work entirely and do it in the evening when the little one's gone to bed, and just maybe do it at a coffee shop down the road or whatever. It's like, it's super flexible. That's what used to appeal to me to a level. And there was just certain other things about, like, the idea of having someone else in the office is, like, quite a big deal. It's like when you're younger, like, the idea of moving out. Like, some people are itching to do it, but also I think at the back of your mind, especially if you're going to be moving out and sharing a house with someone, like a partner or a friend or whatever, like, it's a massive change all of a sudden. All of a sudden there's house rules and stuff. And regardless of hierarchy or whatever, that was definitely at the forefront of my mind. I think as well, a lot of it still comes back to, like, me, like, wanting to be a really good boss. Then that's really important to me. Like, I want Alex to want to come to work. I want him to feel valued. I genuinely want him to go home and realize how much value he's brought to the business, not just financially, but, like, creatively and motivationally, like, on every single level. That's really important to me. It's something that I missed massively at my last place, for whatever reason, is that I felt really undervalued. And that was a really big deal for me. I found it demotivating and demoralizing, and it wasn't like a malicious thing. It just wasn't in the nature of that company to be overly, like, motivational and positive about things. You wouldn't typically get a pat on the back, and some people are all right with that. Like, I need motivation. So what Alex does every day is he pats me on the back and says how amazing I am, and then we have a little cuddle, and it just works. No, we don't know any of that. But, like, I sort of wanted. The point is, I sort of wanted for Alex to just feel motivated and valued, and all of these things. So for me, that was a real like, driving force behind me going into this. Whereas someone else's driving force might be purely financial. And I guess for me, it was almost like my own sanity and scaling the business, and also being able to give someone an opportunity to, like, build their own career and grow inside a business. So it was all those sort of things coming together, I guess.
So you would say it's worth it, as of right now?
I would say, yeah, definitely, yeah. For me, yeah, very much worth it. Yeah, it's honestly the best move that I've made since I left work, basically, to start this up. It's hands down the best move.
And I guess to wrap this up, what would you say to anybody who's considering this but still afraid, still has that fear of the jump? Not that I know anybody.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, one big thing for me was certainly knowing that it's not permanent. That you can trial someone, like, pretty easily for a few weeks, a few months. Like, a 3-month probation is really standard. A lot of places will do 6-month probations and then extend them after that. So you can be quite flexible. For me, I liked the idea of bringing someone in part-time, so it was less for financial risk, and doing the probation, so giving them a part-time 3-month placement and then assessing it after that. I just figured that by the end of that 3 months, I'm going to know like I'm going to be pretty sure about whether that's going to work or not, whether that has been working or not, and be able to make like a far better decision. So, I mean, I would say if you're unsure about it, the pros and like draw up some pros and cons. I think also really question the reasoning, like the reason behind why you would potentially want to bring someone into the business, because as Philippe said, there are other options. There's contractors, there's freelancers, there's all sorts of other things. For me, it was really important to bring someone in with as little baggage as possible as well, to be able to bring someone in who hasn't got like 20 years experience and all this baggage and comes in and says, leave it to me, I know how to do this, because we know in our line of work there's no right or wrong way to do things. People will tell you there is. People constantly break the rule book left, right and centre, and for me it would be hard, it would be almost impossible to bring someone in with a ton of baggage and expectations and then try and mould them and force them to work how I want to work. So I wanted to bring someone in who could soak it all in and adapt to the current way that we're doing things, and then over time start to bring their own unique twist on things. And like honestly, having Alex here, like just today he was doing an edit, and the way he sort of like revealed the first part of the narrative was like, it's not how I would have done it. It was he revealed something slightly earlier than I would have done it, and I found it fascinating.
Did you beat him?
I've obviously just started throwing stuff around the room and trashed the place. It's taken me all day to put it back together. But no, I found it fascinating because he's soaked up so much of the sort of style and the approach and the creative approach that I like to take on things. He's already like a month, 6 weeks in, starting to do things in a slightly different way, and it works. And there'll certainly be a to and fro, and there'll totally be times where where we hopefully both advise each other, and that's what I think is really exciting about this process. I want someone to eventually be able to question my work. I mean, I'll ignore it, but I want someone to question
and add to it, I guess, right? It's nice to have a variety of ideas. Like you said, even revealing something, and then if you put that into production, actually, I find it very useful to have a person that can direct and can be a DP, because there is not a single way that everyone would do. So I always find it interesting and ask the other person, okay, how would you frame this? How would you introduce this scene or something like that? And you know what? More often than not, you might actually like it. So it's interesting to not be so locked into your own opinions and ways of doing things. At least this is what I've seen. And in my case, to be honest, I'm not very good at anything. So when I'm bringing someone in, I try to look for someone that's actually better than me, because that person is going to bring a lot of value and I will learn from them.
You might not want to start your portfolio video that way.
No, sure. I mean, but as a business owner, you want to surround yourself by great people.
Yes.
You want to surround yourself by people that are going to move things forward. If you are the best one in your team, in your company, you by yourself, you have to push things forward. Now, if everyone is very good, everyone lifts the whole thing, and it feels a lot more effortless, I would say.
Well, think about any large film crew, Hollywood or otherwise. It's a large crew, and there are people doing very specific tasks that they are trained and are each individually very good at. And this is often why directors and producers use the same crew people over and over again, because they've established a dynamic and a shorthand. And Steven Spielberg isn't actually shooting his own movies. He's got a DP, you know what I mean? Because that DP can do the job better or offer a somewhat different perspective. So it's all about opening yourself up to other people's input and other people's talents to come in. It's just letting go of a little bit of control, I think.
That's the big thing.
Suspending that fear and saying, this could work out.
Totally. And also, let me just say, I work in a really old, creaky building, and the heating has just come on, and it's hot air heated. So
it's a good time for us to wrap.
We'll see how much we hear of that. I've got a mic on. I've got the shotgun. The shotgun will definitely be picking it up, but we'll see how. But I was going to back up 100% like pretty much everything you've just said there. Well, both of you, Philippe, and you, Gabriel, in terms of, I think it's the creative side of things. Being able to initially let go at all is a huge deal for me, and also wanting. I think Philippe, you hit the nail on the head. Wanting someone like I want Alex to get to the point where like he's just a far better editor than me, and for him to have that same passion that I had when I started like getting into this 10, 12 years ago. I want him to have that same flame and passion that, you know, hopefully I still have to this day. But yeah, I totally want that. I want to see him already over the last couple of months. He is massively exceeded my expectations, and it's exciting to see because exactly as you say, if you're the best at what you do in your business, I mean, you're almost the bottleneck, you're the benchmark. It can't get any good until you start stepping things up. So yeah, that's an exciting part for me, for sure.
Once you've trained Alex to be a rock star, you've got two choices. You know, if he decides to leave the company, you can allow him to work for your competitor, or you just execute him.
I have no idea how to comment on that.
Well, you'll cross that bridge when it comes.
Yeah, I don't even own a guillotine, so.
Oh, there are so many different ways of doing that. I mean.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
we should do a whole episode on
I feel like this video is immediately going to be demonetized.
There's no money. There's barely even viewers, so that's all right.
That's the best part of this, because we're not making money out of it, so whatever, man.
So screw it. Yeah.
Okay, this has been extremely useful. I think it has been useful for me personally. I think it has been useful for people that are watching, listening. And it's actually a good time for me to remind people that all of these episodes are available on Apple iTunes, on Spotify. They are also, of course, on YouTube. You can see them on Facebook, everywhere. But really, Charles, thank you for taking the time to come and talk to us about this. And we're going to be watching you and seeing where you go. Maybe in a few months from now, you're going to say that you have your second employee. Who knows?
I mean, who knows? I think we're cool with just the one employee, the team of two for now. But yeah. Who knows? It's been an absolute pleasure though. Like, thanks for having me on. I hope the Sony doesn't cause you too many headaches. I feel like it probably will do, but we'll cross that bridge when I inevitably receive a very angry message from one of you two saying, "Why the hell do you shoot on Sonys?"
Well, you need to have Alex answer your messages then.
Just send them straight to Alex, and he'll take care of it for you.
Exactly.
All complaints go through Alex.
Nice.
Cool. Thank you very much, and I see you in the next one.
Awesome. Take care, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.